Cristiano Ronaldo, vai embora Cristiano Ronaldo,
Balotelli, Aguero!
Posse de bola para Portugal, vai Éder, chuta!
Hello and welcome to Panenka's Europe, or Europa a Panenka in Portuguese, the series brought to you by the members of the Portuguese podcast Os Panenka. And in this series, we'll be taking a closer look at the fan projects of the Portuguese team's opponents in the European competitions. We'll be speaking with passionate supporters of these teams, learning about their playing style and what makes them unique. And today we'll talk about the Sporting Juventus for the Europa League. And for that matter, we're here with Carlo Garganese from the Italian Football Podcast. So, Carlo, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on your show, João. And happy Easter to all of your listeners.
Thank you so much for being here and accepting our invitation. Happy Easter for our listeners and some Italian listeners that will listen to this when you share it with them, and that consume your work basically. And the Italian Football Podcast, it's a very good project, and let's start by there. Please tell me, how did you start, or how did you get involved with the Italian Football Podcast, and how did you become a Juventus fan?
Okay, Juventus fan, that's going back quite a while now, over 30 years. I think it was like Italian 90, the 1990 World Cup. I was only 5 years old then, and that was when my first real proper memories of football. And at that World Cup, I fell in love really with two players in particular, Roberto Baggio, who was like the young star of Italian football. He'd just broken the world record before that World Cup, moving to Juventus from Fiorentina, and also Toto Schillaci, who was the top scorer at Italia 90, who was at Juventus as well, and he was the kind of the surprise star of the World Cup. And they both Juventus players, and really I think it was kind of from them, watching them at that World Cup, being a young kid, and when you're young you usually have an idol, and so I kind of I think I followed them, and also I had an uncle in Italy who, funnily enough, is Neapolitan and lives in Naples, who but supports Juventus. Strangely, and I think he's the only person in Naples that supports Juventus. And he kind of got me into Juventus. He's a big football fan, and he used to buy me right from then. Always would buy me Juventus shirts and Juventus memorabilia. So that's how I came to support Juventus really back since 1990, and I've supported them since. As for the Italian Football Podcast, well, Italian football's always been my passion, and I've been in the media for the football media for 15 years now, and I've always worked for other people, for corporations, for other media companies, and 3 years ago, 2020, it was during COVID, during the lockdown. I kind of decided, together with two others, Nima Tavali, who I think you know. I always wanted to do something that was my own, that I obviously co-owned, but something that I could be my own project, that I called the shots rather than working for someone else, and never had the opportunity for one reason or another, or never decided to go for it. And during COVID, we decided, Nima suggested it to me and said, do you want to start a podcast? And we started it in the summer, the start of this 2020-21 season, and this is our third season doing it, and it's just been, more than anything, it's just been a lot of fun. I really enjoy it more than anything, and it's we do 3 shows a week now. We do a Monday show, which we do for everyone free. We do a Tuesday show, which we do like a Q&A. We answer the questions of our listeners, which is behind the paywall, which people can subscribe for, and a Thursday, which is also for behind the paywall as well. So we kind of offer a free version, and also a version for those that want to consume more, to repay kind of the extra work that we do, and we enjoy it. We've had some great guests on. We've had lots of players, ex-players, managers, ex-managers, celebrities, people within football and outside of football, on our podcast during the 3 years. We've got to meet some really interesting people, and it's we enjoy it. It's great.
That's really good because our podcast with Panenka also started in COVID, of course, during lockdown. Everyone was with an insane amount of free time, and we just started talking about football. We were 16 at the time. Some of us 16, others 17. So it was really fun for young kids to talk about football in that way. And actually, I'm talking about this too because on this little note, because tomorrow, the 8th of April, in this conversation should be published at the 9th of April, because tomorrow is our 3-year anniversary of the podcast. And so it's a great mark. And I also want to congratulate you and Nima, which is an amazing guest for our podcast too. On the idea.
Yeah, congratulations to you as well.
Thank you so much. So, before we start digging into this Juventus season, I wanted to ask you, what do you know about Sporting and Portuguese football? What's your impression about that?
I've always been a big fan of Portuguese football because my philosophy of football is always, I love technical footballers, attacking football, the players with the fantasy and, the qualities that you kind of associate with Portuguese footballers, not just Sporting, but all of Portuguese football. So I've always loved football. Probably the era of football that I love the most is probably the 80s and 90s, and even before my time. I love the history of football. I love watching football from the past. I love the Portugal 1984 team that got to the semi. Which did you get to in the 84 semi-finals of 84? We had some amazing players. Rui Jordão. Yes, you got to the semi-finals. Semi-finals.
Cup Winners' Cup, maybe.
No, I mean the national team, the national team of Portugal, the Portugal national team.
Oh, yes.
Euro 84, when you lost to France in the semi-final.
Yes.
Yeah, and you had some amazing sporting players in that team. Rui Jordão, the striker, who I think he died a few years ago. He was an amazing striker.
Like 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, fantastic player. And also, Paulo Futre, I loved him. He was an amazing player. I think he started his career at Sporting, but he didn't.
Yes. He started at Sporting, and then obviously into the 90s, Figo and then Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, and there's been some amazing players in Portuguese football. But Sporting as well. I love the shirt as well. The shirt's an amazing shirt. One of the best shirts, I think, in European football. Yeah, you don't like it? No, I do like it, but I did not think that people from other countries would like it that much.
Okay, no, I think it's an iconic shirt. I think I like it anyway. But yeah, it's Sporting I do. I have liked watching the players that come through in Sporting over the years.
Okay, so digging into Juventus. So your club has nothing less than 36 Serie A's, so it's a lot. And the last one was conquered in 1920, so the lockdown season. So right now you're in seventh in the Serie A, and because of that point deduction, and we'll be talking about that later, you're in the semifinals of the Coppa d'Italia. You finished third in the Champions League group with PSG, Benfica, and Maccabi Haifa. You play tomorrow at Saturday against Lazio, and that's a big one. And in your history, you played 2 times against Sporting. So the both games in the group stage of the 17-18 Champions League, and Sporting and Juventus drawn 1-1 in Lisbon, and then Juventus won against Sporting 2-1 in Turin. So, and 7 players represented the both clubs: Paulo Sousa, Dimas, Cristiano Ronaldo, Gladstone, Boginov, Aquilani, and Demiral. So these are the 7 players that represented the both clubs. So after all of this mess of information and context to our listeners, I want to ask you, explain to me this Juventus season, a season of ups and downs, of Allegri almost being expelled from the club, and then being the miracle saver that can make a team with the 15 points less do something good. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's been such a chaotic season for Juventus, both on and off the pitch. It's been like a movie, really. It's been unbelievable. Allegri, I mean, let's talk about the off the field stuff first. Before Christmas, before the new year, the entire Juventus board resigned, and as a result of a number of legal investigations into the club to do with financial wrongdoing, and this led in one of these investigations to a 15-point penalty that Juventus got in the standings. There's going to be an appeal for that in a couple of weeks' time, in which I think Juventus will get their points back, but we'll have to wait and see. But while that's going on, there's some even more serious investigations going on against Juventus, including allegations that they paid during COVID. They paid players, including Cristiano Ronaldo, potentially their wages off the books, so like in the black, basically, where they didn't pay taxes on them, which is obviously very, very serious. And if we see what happens, so that's one of the other investigations. And if they get found guilty for that, it could be a lot of trouble, including more points, penalties, but also criminally a lot of trouble. So that's all been going on off the pitch. The whole board resigned, and basically for a while anyway, Juventus, and still really now to an extent now, nobody in charge of Juventus, and so it's been very, very difficult off the pitch. Lots of financial problems as well with the club. A lot in debt, a lot of losses due to COVID and also through just financial mismanagement. So there's been that cloud hanging over the club. But then also on the pitch, started the season very, very badly under Allegri. Historically bad Champions League group stage, where they got 3 points from 6 games. They lost home and away to PSG and home and away to Benfica, and they also lost one of their 2 games against Maccabi Haifa from Israel. So terrible. A lot of pressure on Allegri. They were doing very, very bad, going into the new year, even ignoring the points penalty. And there's lots of calls for Allegri to get the sack, but in the new year, they've kind of, they've grouped together in the new year, Juventus. I think in a weird way, the points penalty and everything that's been going on off the pitch has kind of helped them become more of a united, and as a result, their form has been really, really good. Their performances haven't always been great. I mean, this is it about Allegri. Allegri doesn't play good football. He plays, mainly solid, defensive, counter-attacking football. Not the kind of football that Portuguese people probably like to see. It's quite not the best football to watch, to be honest with you. But he's been getting the results. They're defending very, very well. And, you look at their form. If you look at the form, Juventus' form has been really, really excellent. And even with the points penalty, I think they're only 6 points off the top 4 now, even with the 15 points penalty. So, they are in good form. And, so that's why they will go into this tie with Sporting as favourites for the tie.
Okay. So one last question about this whole board situation and points deduction. What did you think about Agnelli? That was a really important person in the life of Juventus and was one of the main figures of the whole Super League project. What do you think about him? Are you happy he's gone? What do you think?
It's a difficult one because, you look at what he did for Juventus when he came over and took over as president. Juventus were a total mess. They'd finished 7th 2 years in a row. This is 2009, 2010, 2011. They were a complete joke. Then when Agnelli took over, he brought in Beppe Marotta, who's now at Inter, and then he brought Antonio Conte as the manager, and it was just incredible. They just they won nine titles in a row, which is historic. But things fell away badly, like Agnelli's last few years at the club. He made mistake after mistake after mistake, both footballing decisions and economic decisions and transfer decisions, and the people he hired and the coaches he hired and the whole direction of the club. He just, I don't know what the reason was. Maybe the focus had gone because he was focused on the Super League. Maybe he was just, he stayed too long. I don't know, but the last few years, Agnelli performed very, very badly. But I think, once the dust settles, I think everybody, Juventus fans, will look back and think, you know what, Agnelli did an amazing job, and he was the president during the period of Juventus's most successful period domestically, definitely ever domestically. But obviously, what's happening now with the legal situation, that at the same time that blackens his reign as well.
Of course. So now going to the on the field stuff. Please tell me which players do you think that are the main weapons of Juventus right now? What are the key players of Juventus right now?
Juventus, I think since the new year, since 2023, Di Maria has been Juventus's best player. The first half of the season, he wasn't great. He had a lot of injuries. There was a lot of question marks over how motivated he was. Was he just? I think partly he was just keeping himself back a little bit for the World Cup because he wanted to win that World Cup with Argentina. But since he's come back, he's been amazing. The last couple of games, not so good. He's dipped a little bit, but in general, since the World Cup, he's been incredible, especially in the Europa League. I mean, if you see his performance against Nantes, the first goal he scored against Nantes with the curl, I mean, unbelievable. So I think that, Di Maria is probably the player that Sporting have to stop, I think, in this game. He's definitely the main danger man, obviously, former Benfica player as well. So, he knows the Portuguese teams. So I think definitely Di Maria. If we're talking this season, I think that in defence, I mean, like I said, Bremer and Danilo, the two Brazilians, have been very, very solid at the back. Certainly in 2023, they're very well organised, good in both, very, very good in the air, both very dangerous. Juventus are very dangerous from set pieces. So rather than talking just about players, Juventus have scored so many goals off crosses, headers, off corners, off free kicks, headers, off those types of balls. So that's something that Sporting have to definitely stop. They have to stop Juventus from the set pieces. In terms of individuals, I mean, Pogba is injured. He might be back, but he's barely played all season, so you can't really call him. Vlahovic, I mean, he's had a very bad season, but he is, there's no doubt that there's a top player there, but he's having a very, very bad time of things. Chiesa has come back from a serious injury, and he's having a chronic problem with his knee. So I'm not sure if he'll start, but he can always be, obviously, we know the talent. So I think you have to look at the players that are in form, and I would say Di Maria, definitely.
Okay, and you already talked a little bit about this with the whole set pieces situation, and when you said that Allegri is a more defensive coach. But please tell me, how would you describe your playing style? Your playing style a little bit more specifically.
Playing style, I think it's Allegri's playing style is always to be solid defensively first, be organised. Not to give away stupid goals, to be physically strong, to compete, to be competitive, and to counter-attack. Really, if you want it in a simplistic way, I think that is the way to play. What you won't get with Allegri is he's not a system coach. He's not like, you won't watch him play like you would see somebody like Guardiola or De Zerbi or Spalletti, kind of coaches where when you watch their teams play, you see they have patterns of play They have certain movements, the way that they move as a team, the way that they do the triangles or the little passes. With Allegri, you don't get any of that. You get, the team is set up, is organised, but he allows his attackers to kind of resolve the game themselves. So it's, I think if we're going to pick out a specific way that Juventus score, then they get the ball out wide to their wing backs. They play like a 3-5-1-1 really formation, or 3-5-2. But I think they'll probably go 3-5-1-1 maybe against Sporting. Maybe 3-5-2 at home. I think 3-5-1-1 away. And they get the ball out wide to the wing backs. I think it will be Kostic and Cuadrado, because Cuadrado just got 3-game suspension. So I'm pretty sure Cuadrado will start on the right. Kostic will start on the left wing back, and they get it out wide to them, and they put crosses in. And Kostic is one of the best crossers in the world. I probably should have singled him out when you asked me about the players. I think in the last 3 seasons, I think there's only 3 players in Europe that has more assists than Filip Kostic in the last 3 years. I think that's Messi, Thomas Müller, and De Bruyne, I think, if I remember correctly. So Kostic is very, very dangerous with his crosses from the left-hand side, his balls from the left-hand side. So you will see Juventus get the ball out wide, put crosses in. You won't see too many, one-touch moves and passing and third-round runs and, all the kind of things that you see from, the system coaches or the real pass coaches. So, yeah, it's in a weird way, it's almost like you can't prepare too much against the Allegri teams, because there's no obvious patterns of play when his teams play.
And that could be good for us and be bad for us at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to finish our conversation, please tell me, what are your predictions for these 2 games?
Oh, I don't know. I think it will be tight. I think it will be close. I don't think it will be, one team or the other winning by a comfortable margin. I think it will be like 1 goal win either way, maybe even over the tie. Maybe I think maybe 1 goal decides the tie. So it could be 1-1, then 1-0 or something like that. So I don't know. I think you have to favour Juventus. I think you have to, because I think also Juventus really want this. But then again, I watched Sporting against Arsenal, and I was very, very impressed. I was very impressed the way that they kept the ball and they're technically. And I can easily see Sporting having periods where they dominate possession. That happens a lot against Juventus. So I think maybe I can. If I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to say a 1-goal victory for Juventus in Turin, and then maybe a draw. So maybe like a 1-0 in Turin, then maybe 1-1 in Lisbon. But I would say that because I'm going for Juventus. But I do think it will be tight. I do think it will be tight.
Okay, of course you think Juventus will win, as I think that Sporting will win. But I also think that it's a really tight tie, because even the betting houses are saying this is 50-50. So it would be a really interesting game to watch. And thank you so much for your insights about Juventus. I don't know if you want to sponsor any project that you have in mind. You can tell us all about it.
Oh, right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, just if you're interested in Italian football, then tune into the Italian Football Podcast. We are free weekly podcasters every Monday, and you can find that on all podcasts, Apple Podcast or Spotify. So that's on a Monday. If you want to become a subscriber, a paid subscriber, is €2.99 a month, and you can go to patreon.com/TIFP to become a subscriber. And for that, you get the Q&A on a Tuesday, you get an extra show on a Thursday, and also any interviews and post-match and special podcasts that we do. We're also on YouTube, Italian Football Podcast. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter, Facebook. We're on all the social media platforms.
Okay, thank you so much for your participation. And I hope Juventus has a great season, but not in the Europa League.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having me, João, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Liverpool 3-0. Corner taken quickly, Origi!
Está jogado Cristiano Ronaldo, vai embora Cristiano Ronaldo, bateu, golo.
Balotelli, Aguero!
Posse de bola para Portugal, vai Éder, chuta!